Welcome to the National Women's Fitness Academy podcast. We're here to talk about women's health, female hormones, body image, and all things health and fitness.
Hello, girls, and welcome back to another episode of the Women's Fitness Academy's podcast. I'm your host, Siggy, one of the WFA's educators and a women's fitness and body image online coach. Today, I'm chatting with the lovely Kasey. And for those who don't know Kasey, she holds a Ph.D. in psychology and is also a certified health and fitness coach. Now, Kasey has spent a good chunk of her life developing some serious expertise around mindset and health and behavior change. And knowing that most people, especially women, are obsessed with the way they look, they want to train, they want to become healthy, they come through a lot of obstacles. So Kasey and I are going to sit down today and chat about all of these, especially because Kasey has a background in PhD in this stuff and has also created a course around this, which is called the Health Mindset Coaching Certification, which I'm super grateful to be part of this year. And that way it's for us to change the way we coach. So after successfully changing lives, minds, and bodies over, I think it's hundreds of individuals that you've worked with, or correct me if I'm wrong, maybe it's like more. But what are some,
we may be over like 1,000 at this point with KJO coaching. Actually, we're definitely over 1,000 at this point because I was coaching individually for a long time before I built a coaching team. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Wow. Cool. All right. Well, there you go, girls. 1,000. Now, by being able to help a lot of people change their lives and behaviors, what are some things that you wished you knew when you began your fitness and health journey?
Oh gosh, so many things. Let's see. Honestly, what would have been really awesome is if I had some of the very beginning stages, had someone come up next to me and just tell me, from a mindset perspective, like, hey, like you're gonna get there. You will achieve like what you're looking for. You will figure it out. It will feel more sustainable. You will find something that works well for you. You just like had someone reminding me of that, I think, because early on, like at the very beginning, when I'm finding myself like, I'm even thinking like like late high school, like beginning college years, when I was really starting to kind of like fumble around the gym and like what works, what doesn't. Oh my gosh, I remember like having going up to a personal trainer at a gym in my hometown and asking them how to get rid of love handles. And she told me to do like this specific like ab exercise. And I'm just like, no, that's not correct. But I did that ab exercise like 4 times a week, right? So it's just like, I think that would have been, so yes, there's like some of the myths and things like that I would have loved to know is not like a reality, but I do think it would have just been have that like little like bird on your shoulder saying like, you'll figure it out. It's going to be there, kind of like telling me what the future does like look like for me. Because from a mindset perspective, the more you believe that you are going to figure it out, that you will be successful, that you will find the thing that works for you and it won't feel so hard all the time. If you can truly get into that headspace, everything comes easier, quicker, more efficiently, right? So I do think like if there's one thing from a mindset perspective, that's what I would have really liked to have. I will say as time went on, like now we're talking like later college years, and I really started to kind of bust some of these myths and figure things out. I did have a pretty strong growth mindset, and I truly think like to this day, this was now, oh my gosh, we're talking like this was probably 2013, 2014, and now we're in 2023. So 10 years ago, which is insane. Yeah. Once I was at that point, I remember like being in the locker room at the gym and looking at myself and thinking like, wow, what am I going to look like in a year from now if I keep up with this, And that is very much like, I didn't know it at the time, but that was a very strong growth mindset and a very strong growth mindset way of thinking that probably led me to being more consistent and being as successful as I have been in the health and fitness industry as a whole going forward. So I didn't always have that at the beginning though, which is why I'm kind of like, it would have been nice if I had that sort of perspective near the beginning, and to kind of keep me from doing a lot of stupid stuff too.
Oh my God, I can just think of all the stupid shit that I did back then and wishing and wishing that I hadn't done the things that I did. But again, like we just don't learn from those mistakes and the experiences. And it's so frustrating to find coaches who are still doing the squat, like the fat spot reduction,
I know.
certain exercise, like getting the abs. And I feel as if like we've come a long way, but we still have a really long way to go with all of that.
Yeah, it's too bad that some of that stuff still exists. And I think too, like you may feel this way too, being in our bubble of, evidence-based practices and coaches who have been around for like a decade. And we're talking about kind of like the intricacies of things at this point. Like you forget that there are still people out there thinking like, oh yeah, if I do this ab exercise, I'm going to lose fat on that area of my abs. And it's like, no, like I thought we were over this like 15 years ago. But just because we have evolved does not mean that everybody else is. Like when we were in that place, there are so many women out there who are in that place right now, and they need coaches like us to kind of like set the record straight, right?
How do you go about that? Because like we can sense, like, well, I know sometimes I can sense this frustration within myself just because a lot of people still don't get what we do and how to change that mindset around that. So what are some things that have helped you, have these conversations with clients to change that behavior or change that mindset pattern?
Yeah, that's like the golden question, right? Is like how do we get people to think about this stuff differently, because it is so important and it's such like a foundational piece if you want to create a healthy lifestyle, like lose the weight, do all the things and actually make it last, right? So really the first thing I always say that's important when it comes to wanting to shift your mindset into a better place to create these lasting changes is that you got to get uncomfortable and figure out where you have a fixed mindset in the first place, right? You have to accept the fact that there are areas for you to improve in your mindset and the way that you're thinking about things, your perceptions, maybe even comes down to like the perspective that you have of yourself, like as a person. So I think that is something that a lot of people don't want to do because it is uncomfortable to kind of like be on the lookout for where you're holding yourself back and where your mindset could use a little bit of an upgrade, right? It's not comfortable to think that, oh yeah, like I'm doing this to myself and I'm thinking in ways that's actually keeping me from being successful. So a big part of that, and as you know, inside the health mindset coaching certification, we talk about this in the very first week, awareness is so, so, so important. Because if you're not, and it's basic and like people are probably listening to this and like, yeah, of course I need to like be aware, but not enough people are actually doing it and like trying to become more aware of these things, right? So it's one thing to be like, yes, I know I need to do that. It's another thing to actually seek more awareness and put in the effort to obtain it. So you cannot change things that you don't know need changing. You can't improve anything if you don't know what needs improving. Like you got to get specific here. So we have to get specific about where your mindset is potentially lacking and where we can improve it. So the first thing is to just start to pay attention and try to pinpoint where maybe your fixed mindset is showing up. And there's a lot of different ways this can show up, like depending on, could be just like your language, start looking for how often are you saying things like, oh, I always do this, or I can never do that, or I'm not the type of person to do this stuff, or I'm not the type of person to like exercise multiple times a week. Like I'm not an exerciser, like those like speaking to your identity in that way too. All of those things can be encompassed inside like a fixed mindset type of language or identity in that way. Other things too, just like how you're reacting to setbacks and obstacles, or how you receive feedback from other people, how you view the success of other people. You see Sheila from high school on your Instagram feed, and she's lost 100 pounds, is living in a mansion, has 3 beautiful children, like a super hot husband. And you're like, how does she has all these things? Like, I can't even like lose the weight. She just got lucky. It must be her genetics. All of this stuff got handed to her. All of that way of thinking is very much a fixed mindset, rather than maybe thinking like, dang, Sheila figured it out, then I certainly can figure it out. Maybe I need to go talk to Sheila. Maybe Sheila has some ideas for me, right? And seeing those people's successes as inspiration rather than, oh, this means I can't be like that. I'm not a person like that. And seeing it as more or less evidence that you can't do it rather than evidence that you can, right? So really trying to start to essentially go on a fixed mindset hunt and see where some of this stuff is maybe showing up for you, because that's where you kind of need to start.
That speaks volumes to me so much, because I went through a period where I was constantly saying people are so lucky to get to, you know, the goals that they're doing or the careers that they're having. And here I was just sitting in this like pool of like fixed mindset shit. And I was just like, come on, we need to change this. And I love the fact that we've opened the conversation around self-awareness, because too often people are not aware enough of their behaviors till something clicks and they're like, whoa, here I am. I need to call myself out on my bullshit. And one of my favorite things about being a coach is being able to have these uncomfortable conversations with clients to make them realize, hey, like something's just not feeling right now. Like, how can we change the narrative? Like, how can we look at it at a different point of view? And funnily enough, I had a client call yesterday and she was explaining to her how time poor she was. I don't have time to exercise. And I love that. And I want to have your perspective on this, because obviously it comes up so many times. I don't have time to exercise. I don't have time to meal prep. I don't have time to go for my walks. Like, what are some things that have helped you have these conversations with clients?
Oh yeah, the big time debate. And here's the thing, right? I do not ascribe to the everybody has the same 24 hours in a day, because it's not true. You know, if you have a friend who has 4 children, she's a stay-at-home mom, but she also like operates like her full-time business and she doesn't have any help at home, like her 24 hours are very different than maybe me, for instance, right? I have one dog. She's the easiest dog on the planet. I work at home. I set my own schedule. We've talked about how that can sometimes, you know, get in the way too, but set my own schedule. I have no children, you know, nobody to answer to. It's just me and my dog, right? And that is an entirely different 24 hours than this other gal who maybe has, you know, 4 kids at home and she's doing the stay-at-home mom thing. She's also trying to get her business up and running, etc. So first and foremost, I think it's important to understand, especially if you are a coach and you're listening to this, or you're even just thinking about your own life and comparing it to others, is that not everybody has the same days, schedules, lifestyles, 24 hours, right? So stop right where you are there and don't compare to like what your day-to-day should look like, right? Because the reality is not really about what you should be able to do. It's what is possible for you that will actually start to move the needle, even if it's just 1% towards the goals that you're looking to achieve, whether it is weight loss, just generally like a healthier lifestyle, like feeling better, whatever. So starting there, now you can kind of like take a step back and think like, okay, you don't have any time to meal prep. You don't have any time to go to the gym, but you have these health and fitness goals. What would you be willing to make time for? Because a lot of times, as we know too, what it comes down to, and it's like, this is not me calling out everybody, but there are these situations where it's like you get overwhelmed with like 4 days in the gym per week, meal prepping like twice a week. There's just no way I have time for that before you even like try, before you even try to fit it in somewhere, right? And so, like, meal prepping doesn't have to be anything like crazy and fantastic either. You know, I was meal prepping this morning and working at the same time because I put sweet potatoes in the oven and chicken in the crock pot. That's my meal prepping. You know, that doesn't really take a lot of time, truly like 5 minutes out of my day, right? And again, I'm not like the busy mom of 4 either. So busy mom of 4 could certainly do that, you know, and also just figure out, it's understanding too at what point you are holding yourself back by saying there's no way I can do this, and it's coming from a fixed mindset place of like, I'm not capable of doing this, or I've tried it in the past and it didn't work. And so discerning if it's that, or if it truly is, this isn't going to work in my lifestyle. Because if that's not going to work, then we can start talking about other options. Like, are you able to afford like a meal prep service? You know, could we, instead of talking about going to the gym 4 days a week, could we do like 3 full body days a week and then just get some more walks at home, or play with your kids some more? There's other options over here if truly you can't make it work in your schedule. But again, it's really important to understand if like, do we need to like run down the list of options, or have you just not really given this a full shot yet? Have you not actually given like 2 weeks of doing these things and see if you can make them fit first and really try, right? or it really is you just holding yourself back and saying like, I'm not the type of person to be able to do those things. Or like, I just intuitively know I can't fit my schedule, but I've never tried it yet. So it's like, I may be calling out some of you listening, but also understand that I'm not trying to, right? I just want you all to be able to sit here and become more aware of maybe which camp you fall in and be honest with yourself. Because the only way you're going to make progress and be super successful in the long run forever is to be honest with yourself right now at where your baseline is and what you are willing to try.
Such an important way of going about it. And I tend to feel that sometimes when I have these conversations with people, or even just talking about it on social media, people get quite defensive and triggered about it. And I love how you opened the conversation going, hey, like we don't have the same 24 hours every day or like compared to other people, which is so true. And I also want to have a better understanding from your perspective is so I've been seeing so many Instagram posts lately. I don't know if it's just because of what I'm liking lately, but there's certain people that come across my page and they're like, if it's important for you, you will make time for it. Now, I know that's a very like bro style of going about it. And I can confess that I'm guilty of saying that times and putting myself into shame for not doing the things that are important for me. However, I do sense that's not really the positive way of going about change. And I would love your perspective around that.
Yeah. And I think this is like, it comes down to almost like a more masculine way about going about things, right? Just very like discipline over motivation and like you make time for what's a priority to you and just like this like very aggressive way about going about it. And I do think like for some people that might work. And it's just like, yeah, you're right. Like I do just need to get my priorities in check. And like, hey, that might be you, if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, I do kind of have my priorities out of whack, or, I'm saying I want to lose weight. I want to be healthier. I want to live a healthier lifestyle, but I'm still prioritizing, binge drinking on the weekends, or like I'm not making space to meal prep, even though I keep saying I can do it and I want to do it. So like in those cases, yeah, maybe you do need to have like a little bit of like a reality conversation with yourself and really determine like, are these my priorities, or is it just like a pipe dream that I'm not willing to work for? So like that is the conversation. And I think like I'm not someone who's going to sit over here and just be airy fairy and be like, well, if it's not something that you don't want, that you want to do, then like don't do it and you'll figure it out. And like, I don't think that's the case. I think there needs to be some structure here, and there needs to be some conversations that you have with yourself. Like, again, kind of like be honest with yourself, right? But at the same time, like understand that the whole discipline over motivation type of conversation isn't really productive either, because ultimately, if we're just like always disciplining ourselves and we have to be disciplined, that is really coming from a space of lacking self-compassion as well. So there needs to be this balance of like, be disciplined, be honest with yourself, be real with like what your priorities are and what you want to accomplish, work backwards from there. What actions do you need to take in order to get there? But also be compassionate with yourself. If you have a week where you're off, it's like not a huge deal. It's a drop in the ocean if you can just get back up and keep going the next week. And sometimes things need to be adjusted. You need to be flexible. You may have to like, oh, well, I actually don't have time to meal prep this week because all of these things have happened. That's fine. What can we do instead? And it doesn't mean like, well, a disciplined person would still make it work. It just, no, it doesn't need to be that way. There could be other ways of going about it, right? So as always, I feel like there's just like a really happy middle ground to be living in with these messages. Like, I don't think we should just be disciplined or like, you don't actually care. If you're not motivated, that means like you don't actually want it bad enough. Like, don't think we need that. But I also don't think we just need the, just, go about your day and figure it out. And it's okay. We can just brush it under the rug every single time you go out and binge drink instead of like sticking to your goals, because we do need to have like a serious like middle ground that isn't too masculine or like disciplined or aggressive in that way, right?
Yeah, such a good point. It's something that a lot of people haven't been aware of, because again, like we get fed these ideas that we have to keep on going, keep on pushing. And if we don't do it, then we're failures and we have the guilt and the shame. And then the self-sabotage comes in as well. And I sense the self-sabotage is like I guess it is a reflection of those, such masculine behaviors, because we just don't know how to navigate it around our heads.
Yeah, it definitely could be. And like self-sabotage can come from a lot of different things and can be presented in a lot of different ways. Not everybody self-sabotage is the same. Before off air, before we started recording, I actually self-sabotaged this afternoon, right? We were talking about how when I have flexibility in my schedule, which I do most days, unless I do have like a full day of calls or something like that. Today, I kind of ended up with like an afternoon of not a lot of productivity. And now I'm like, great. So instead of doing this podcast at 4 p.m. in the afternoon and wrapping it up and being able to be done for the day, now I have to work this evening because I, decided to like screw off in the afternoon instead, basically, for lack of a better phrase. So like I'm self-sabotaging myself in that way, but it's interesting because I'm understanding that like, okay, I didn't have the afternoon that I wanted, but that doesn't mean that I'm now, going to beat myself up for it or feel guilty about it. It's just like, okay, I'm just going to adjust. I'm just going to have to, work a little bit later this evening. And that's okay. Whatever. Not a big deal. It's not going to like really make a huge difference for like my bedtime or anything like that. So it's fine. It's whatever. So like, I think that's a really good lesson too, just in general for any of you that do feel like, oh, like I definitely suffer from self-sabotage in a health and fitness context. How often are you self-sabotaging and then recognizing that that's what it was? Why did it happen? What caused it? How do we make sure it doesn't happen again, or at least try not to, and then move on? It doesn't necessarily have to be okay, well, how are we going to blame ourselves for this and feel ashamed for it and feel guilty? And like, what's our punishment now? It's like actually self-sabotage is very much a normal human thing. And it often comes from a place of protecting you in some way or trying to solve some other problem or eliminate some other discomfort. Like there's a lot of reasons we do it. And it often comes back to like, it's just a biological human thing, right? So understanding that, so like when those behaviors happen, instead of beating yourself up again, kind of like making sure you're playing these both of these like roles in a healthy manner. So you're not just like, how could you do that? You should be more disciplined. You should be better, but also not just being like, okay, like no big deal. We just won't think about it or do anything about it. We'll just start again tomorrow. Everything's fine. There needs to be a place in the middle of, okay, so why did that happen? Is there anything I could do in the future to make sure it doesn't happen again? How do I feel about it now? And what's the flexible option here that I maybe can do instead, since that didn't go to plan, right? And just be okay with that and just accept that. It's like, it's kind of stemming from actually like acceptance commitment therapy. This is often what folks are doing, even like therapists, mental health counselors, things like that with their patients, like thinking, okay, we can accept that this happened, but that doesn't mean just like accept it and move on. It's like, let's accept it, not feel bad about it, but also what can we learn from the situation and just trying to tackle it that way. I totally went on a tangent by myself here. So I hope that was helpful.
It was definitely helpful on my end. I hope our listeners do understand the reasoning behind it. I did have a question about self-sabotage. Yes. So let's say one of our listeners right now is listening and they're like, yeah, I have tendencies of self-sabotage, but I'm not aware of it. And they are going through a cycle of, whether it's like them pushing their workouts down the week or not getting the meal prep down. What's one way that we can help them to make them more self-aware around their self-sabotage behaviors?
Yeah, for sure. I think, so we all know to some degree when things go not according to plan, right? And then we can reflect and be like, oh, that was on me, or it was on like the circumstance, or like wherever you're placing blame. Like if you're placing blame on yourself, that's typically like, okay, so I self-sabotage myself in that situation, right? Things didn't go the way that I wanted to. I kept pushing the workouts, and now I have, interesting, one day to get 6 workouts in. How am I going to do that? So when you see that happens, but a lot of people just kind of honestly operate on autopilot day to day, and they're doing some of these things without really giving it like full attention, especially, again, it's uncomfortable to spend a lot of time with the fact that maybe you just made a decision that isn't in your best interest, right? So like, oh, I'll just stay on the couch. I could use another rest day today. And then you just move on with your life. It's not like, should I stay on the couch? What are the repercussions if I stay on the couch? Is it going to make me feel better or worse tomorrow if I stay on the couch? What will this mean for my entire week as a whole if I stay on the couch tonight? We're not doing that. So it's way more comfortable to just be like, yeah, I'm just going to make this decision and not think about any of like the repercussions or what this could mean for myself tomorrow, my future self or my ideal self. Right. So in those moments, if you can catch yourself in those like decision-making times of like, should I order another drink? Should I meal prep or should I watch Netflix? Should I go to the gym or should I just go straight home? When you try to catch yourself in those moments and just ask yourself one more question, like, literally in those moments, if you can say like, okay, as I'm making this decision, what would me tomorrow really prefer I do right now? And you can just ask that one question. There's a lot of other questions. There's a lot of questions you could ask yourself, but if you can just start with one, because I think also what's really important in this change process is that we're not just jumping directly to change, right? Not just jumping directly to like, okay, I'm going to force myself to go to the gym, or I'm going to force myself to meal prep, even though I want to do this instead. Like, you don't even need to do that. Just like in this decision-making moment, ask yourself, what is the Kasey tomorrow actually wishing that I'm doing right now? And start there. And if Kasey tomorrow is like, she does not care if you meal prep or watch Netflix or go to the gym or stay home, then like, okay, now you've made a little bit more of like a confident, conscious decision, right? I just want everyone to start making more conscious decisions based on their goals, their ideal selves, what their future selves, like what's actually going to make them feel the best by the end of the week. And if it just starts with that one question, kind of essentially interrupting the pattern that you normally do, then you're already making progress, right? So, and I think especially for someone who feels like it feels a little bit like automatic or unconscious, or they're just like unaware of what they're actually doing, just interrupting the process with a question or anything for that matter can be really helpful.
So helpful. And I found also that a lot of people make their decisions based on fear as well.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, fear of what? Gosh, there can be fear of like so many things, right? Fear of like, oh, if I actually do this, then I have to keep up with it for a while. Like if I choose to go to the gym today of the 4 days a week that I'm shooting for, God, then I have to do 4 days a week the next week and the next week and the next week. And oh my God, I have to exercise for the rest of my life. And it may not be a conscious process like that, right? It could be like, if I start doing this, I have to keep doing it. And that can be hard for people to grapple with too, because it's just change at that point. And exercise isn't always like the most comfortable, fun thing to do either, right? You'll have good days and bad days. Like today I went to the gym and I literally thought to myself, I was like, I can't believe that after I've been training consistently for like 12 years that I'm still excited to go and do this stuff. Like I'm still excited to go do lateral raises. Like what? I can't believe that. But then there are definitely other days where I'm like, the last thing I want to do in the world is go to the gym today. I'm busy. I have other things I want to do. I just like do not want to be there today. And that happens too. But guess what? I still go, and then afterwards, I'm always happy that I still went. I always feel better. So anyway, with that's almost a different conversation, but kind of trying to think too, maybe in those moments when you're making those decisions and you're like, oh, I really just don't want to go. I know I should go. I don't want to meal prep. I know I should. Asking yourself, what are you afraid of? Like, what are you afraid of? Like, what's the worst case scenario if you were to do this? Like what's going to come of it? And really like having that logical conversation with yourself too, because it's like, okay, the 30 minutes that I'm going to take to meal prep, is that really like cutting into the rest of my day that massively? Like, what am I afraid of? What am I worried about, concerned about, that if I do this thing, it's going to negatively impact something else? And some people can like think about that and go, God, I'm totally blowing this out of proportion. You're like, you're right, but we're not taking the time to stop for a second and just think about it. But yeah, the fear of, oh my gosh, so many things. And also like, obviously the fear of failure, right? You're worried that if you start with this stuff, that you're not going to be able to keep up with it. You are going to disappoint yourself. And then you're going to be stuck back where you started. But actually just made a reel about this, I think yesterday.
Yeah, I watched it the other day.
Yeah, like that concept is so interesting that people are so scared to like hire a coach or be consistent with their health and fitness, like follow a program, whatever, because they're so worried they're going to fail.
Yeah.
But ultimately, if you fail, you end up where you are right now. So like you're most worried that you are going to be in your current reality. So you're scared of what you currently are doing. So it's such an interesting paradox that like we're all so scared to try and fail, but like at least if you try, you start to learn some stuff about yourself and about health and fitness, and make it easier for yourself regardless if you do fail or not. Like if you want to get back on the wagon, on the horse, whatever, later on, you have more tools and understanding at your disposal than you did before. To me, there's like no losing here. There's always something to gain by trying, right? And the only way to guarantee that you will fail, aka you will not change and keep doing what you're currently doing, is to not try. Like that's the only way to actually guarantee it. So anyway, that's my soapbox for that.
It's so good because it's well put, because a lot of people do tend to have that fear of failure. But as you said, like there's nothing that's actually going to make you fail. You're in a situation where you're feeling unhappy. So why not try something else? And if it doesn't work, try a different way, because worst case scenario, you just go back to the same stance that you were in before. So like, yeah.
Exactly. The worst case scenario is your current reality,
Yes.
you know? So like, what do you have to lose really? So yeah, I think that's like such an important conversation to have. And I hope that people listening to this are like, oh my God, you're so right. What am I doing?
And you also mentioned that a lot of
Awareness.
people have that fear of investing in coaching.
I was just going to say, like, I think people are scared to invest in anything. It's like, whether it's a financial investment in like an energy investment, effort investment, time investment, people are scared to make those investments because they're worried that they're not going to make the most of them, that they will fail, that they'll just like end up back where they're started. And like, now I've lost time and money and energy and effort and all of this stuff, and I'm right back where I am again. But again, kind of what I was mentioning before is like, if you invest in those things, you will get something out of it. Even if, you know, you invest in a coach for 6 months and you learn so much and you figure out what works for your body and what doesn't, and you lose some weight, and then you stop working with that coach, and over the next year, you may gain that weight back. But now it's like, oh, okay, at least I know what to do now to lose the weight again. You know, and I'm not saying like that's how the process should go. Like you should be working with a coach who then can like set you up so you can continue to be successful on your own without that coach. And that's exactly what, you know, what I teach inside the health mindset coaching certification, and why it's so important to have that foundational knowledge of behavior change, psychology, and mindset, and not just nutrition and exercise. But I do think that's the biggest fear, is that like, if I invest, then I'm not going to be able to do everything that is required of me. Or there may be a lack of trust in the coach too, which like, then it's on the coach, right? If you feel like I am worried about making an investment in this coach because I'm not sure they can deliver what I'm looking for, then have a conversation with that person. You know, I don't think any of us would be spending a significant amount of time with anyone in our lives. Like if you're looking for a significant other or a new best friend or a boss, or, you know, you're hiring someone yourself, like you're not going to trust that that person is going to give you what you need in whatever that relationship is, without having conversations and asking questions and getting to know that person first. So if you're sitting here and you're feeling like, oh, I just like don't know if I am ready to invest in this person because I don't know if I fully trust them yet, or I really understand the program, talk to them. Ask more questions, you know, have conversations. It's a relationship that you're really buying into here. And just like any other relationship, you wouldn't just be like, sure, let's spend 6 months together, even though I don't know who you are and I don't know if I trust you yet. So it's the same thing goes. I make like the parallels between like romantic relationships and a coach to client relationship all of the time, because there is so many similarities in like how we need to operate in those situations, like in order for them to thrive. Right.
It's so true. As before you said that, I was thinking of like dating and coaching, and they're very similar in terms of how we go about it. Because again, you're not going to be spending time with a significant other if you don't know what they want. You have to get to know them. So you have to ask those hard questions or have those awkward conversations. But too often people don't. And they have that fear of, oh, what if it goes wrong? And then they just like go away and keep doing what they're doing, which obviously that's not the answer.
Right, exactly. Yeah, like, oh my gosh, can you imagine? Oh, I just met this guy and he's gonna be my boyfriend. No, that's not, no, like, and no coach should expect you to do that either, right? Like that's why I think like discovery calls or consult calls inside a coaching business are so, so helpful. And as like the consumer, as the client, you might be out there like, oh, I don't want to get on the phone or get on Zoom or whatever with this person, but remember, like you're going to buy into a relationship with this person. It's not just like, oh, I'm just going to buy a program. Like you're actually going to be communicating with this person. So those calls are really for you as like the prospective client more than anything, because we as the coach like want to make sure that you feel comfortable, you have all your questions answered, like you know exactly what you're going to be getting from the coaching relationship, and all of that. Like definitely feel free. I think this is like just good for everyone to know. Any coach that you might be interested in working with, reach out to them, send them a DM on Instagram. Like you can talk to them, you know, and they all will absolutely, good coaches will appreciate that. And they'll be so thankful that you're vetting them beforehand and that you're making sure that it's a good fit, because those coaches shouldn't want to be in a relationship with you either. If they 2 months down the line, you're like, this is not what I was looking for. This is, you know, this isn't a good fit. And it's like, oh, nobody wants to be in that situation, coach or client. So anyway, we can go on and on about that. But.
I know, right? But it's such an important topic, and I feel as if a lot of people need to understand it, especially coaches. Like majority of women who listen to this are coaches, and I know they can resonate to this message right now about having to build a relationship with a person before actually hiring them as a client. And you know what? I'm guilty of it, of hiring a person to work with me, and we had to call quits within, I think it was 4 or 5 weeks, because we were just not a good fit.
Not a good fit. Yeah. And that happens. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad coach or they're a bad person. It's just like with friendships and romantic relationships and, you know, co-workers, sometimes you just don't vibe. And that's okay. You know, we're all very different, special humans, and that's totally fine. And that's important too. Or it could be like a process thing too. You know, I thought I was coming in here to get a meal plan and you don't do meal plans, you know, so stuff like that, just like the logistics of all of that needs to be discussed too.
Definitely. I totally agree. Kasey, what's one thing you're hoping to be able to change within the industry?
Oh, one thing. Honestly, I guess just like as on like a broad global scale, I just really would like more coaches to be equipped with the knowledge that you're learning inside the health mindset coaching certification. I think it's so overlooked, or it's so it's like put into this space of like the woo woo manifestation, hashtag positive vibes type of mindset, right? In air quotes. And I mean, I still see it all the time. I mean, half the fitness coaches I come across on Instagram or whatever say like, oh, I'm also a mindset coach. You know, I'm mindset coach in their bio, fitness coach and mindset coach. And then I'm thinking, but like, what are you doing from like an evidence-based mindset perspective? And the thing is, most people don't even realize that there are evidence-based practices when it comes to mindset and behavior change, right? They just kind of assume like, oh, I could just be like the cheerleader and we can talk about their mental health. And that's really not all there is to it, like even a little bit, right? So long story short, my one thing I want to change in the industry is just bringing more true mindset science to health and fitness coaching, rather than just like the woo woo fluffy type of mindset, which has its time and place too, but it's really not what's best when it comes to true lasting behavior change.
There you go. I love that. You see, like I'm very like spiritual, so I love the woo, but I know I need to know the evidence-based side of things as well. Because again, you can believe all the, you know, sage lighting and the burning the candles and all that. But if we actually don't know the reasoning behind this or how to help people change their behaviors for the better, then we're kind of like going in the wrong direction.
Absolutely. And oh my God, give me all the crystals, give me all the sage. Like I love that stuff too. Like it's so fun. I went to a tarot card reader like 2 weeks ago. But it's so fun. And this is me as like a PhD in psychology. Like I still find benefit to that from like a self-reflective purpose. And like, again, like if you believe this is doing something for me, it probably will. Like, welcome to the placebo effect also, you know, regardless of anything. So it's fun to believe in things, and it's fun to learn more about yourself. And I recently like learned more about my different, like my zodiac signs, how there's like your sun, your rising, and your moon, and all. And, like we went into this with another practitioner, and it's so fun, and it is a really great way to like get to know yourself and connect with other people. Absolutely love it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Like do all of those things, but then also if you're a coach and you're looking to actually help someone change their mindset and make lifestyle changes for good, you do need to have these foundational understandings of science when it comes to like psychological science like that. There's an interplay of all of them for sure.
100%. And speaking of changing mindset and behavior change, when is your next intake for HMCC?
Yeah, I don't have a specific date yet, but we're right now eyeing September 2023. So that's probably around the time that I would look for. But usually we do like a spring and a fall cohort. So it will be sometime in the fall.
Awesome. And if there was another way for listeners to either work with you, I'm not sure if you're seeing clients, or with your team, how can they approach you about this?
Yeah, for sure. So the health and fitness coaching side of my business is KJO Coaching. So if you want to learn more about that, you can find us on Instagram, KJO Coaching, or www.kjocoaching.com. So we have a website. And then if you are interested in working with, I do work with female business owners in a one-on-one capacity, but you have to have gone through the health mindset coaching certification first. So we're kind of like an exclusive group because we do some like advanced trainings and things like that. So having that baseline level knowledge is really important. That's inside the Growth Collective. So that is a mentorship opportunity to work with me. And that's the only way to work with me one-on-one at this point in time. I do have some workshops and DIY courses that are really, really affordable. If you're like, I kind of want to dabble, but I'm not ready to do like a full certification yet. And you can find those on my website. If you go to kaseyorvidas.com/programs, you'll find everything there. So you can find more information about coaching, about the Growth Collective, about the certification, and some of these workshops and DIY courses as well.
I love it. Well, girls, I hope you get in touch with Kasey because she's full of knowledge.
Thank you so much. This is awesome.
Good. I'm glad. And girls, if you enjoyed today's podcast, please make sure that you screenshot it, tag us at the Women's Fitness Academy, tag Kasey, tag myself. And then till next time, let's build a little bit more self-awareness and taking self-responsibility of our actions.
Love it.